Hello, welcome to Leading the Way at Leonard's. I'm your host, Ken Johnson. Today, we are joined by three guests from the Truckload Carriers Association, the only trade association 100% focused on the truckload segment of the motor carrier industry. Jim Ward is president of the TCA, Dave Heller is senior VP of Safety and Government Affairs, and Jim Schoonover is VP of Education for TCA. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us, Ken. We appreciate it.
Good to be here with you, Ken.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to it as well. Jim Ward, can you tell us about the TCA, why it was created, and what do you do?
Absolutely, be happy to, Ken. It's hard to believe that this year in 2023, we're looking back on 85 years of Truckload Carriers Association. It was basically formed in 1938 as the Contract Carriers Association, with a pretty simple mission to protect and promote the needs of contract carriers. As we moved through time and moved into the 1980s and, the industry experienced deregulation, at that particular point in time, it changed its name to the Interstate Carriers Conference. And as we probably one might realize is that a few years later down the road, they realized that the name began to become confused with the government agency of ICC. So they took it upon themselves in the early 90s to make a change to the name to the Interstate Truckload Carriers Conference, and then later the Truckload Carriers Conference, or Truckload Carriers Association in 1997, which is where we find ourselves today. So it's been an interesting road over the years, a lot of history, a lot of great people in leadership roles, a lot of great staff, a lot of great members. Today we're about 850 members strong. 500 and some plus of that are carriers. We basically, as you stated, represent the truckload industry, all modes, dry van, refrigerated, reefer or step deck, as some people might call it, as well as the bulk tanker arena.
Great. Yeah, I can remember one of my first trucking association events that I attended was a TCA event in Notre Dame. It was an educational. We flew to Notre Dame. It was in person for 3 days. I think I got a quarter credit at Notre Dame because of that. So, but that was back when the days when every break everybody dashed to the payphones because there weren't cell phones or anything else. So I think it was in the mid '80s. So it's certainly been a great organization for ours. We've probably my dad's company, KJ Transportation, was fairly active in it. And once Leonard started adding trucks and grew the truck side of it, it certainly made sense for us to become a part of it again. And it's been great. We appreciate the opportunities, with the Best Fleets Awards and the Fleet Safety Awards. I think, it gives our company goals, and helps us, improve. And, we certainly appreciate the things that TCA does, for us and the other carriers. Dave, how do awards like Best Fleets to Drive for and Fleet Safety Awards benefit the industry?
That's a great question. If you're looking at the treetop level, these awards give TCA and the industry the opportunity to showcase those carriers that do things right, that their operations are the right way to run a trucking company. Their safety performance is the excellent way to go about delivering freight. That's the treetop level. It's that opportunity to share the story about what trucking companies are doing out there, kind of contradictory to some of the negative news aspects that we get. So that's purpose number one. Purpose number two is allowing carriers, all carriers of TCA, members of TCA, as well as those outside, to look at some of these carriers and use it to benchmark some of their numbers. One of the things we pride ourselves in TCA, specifically in government affairs, is what can we do to make the driver's life better? And the operations and the way these carriers go about doing business, safety, operations, otherwise, demonstrate exactly that. And they're the cream of the crop. They're the pride of our industry and what we like to showcase, and allow other carriers the opportunity to follow the model that gets set before them. The data that comes out of these contests alone allow for benchmarking opportunities, specifically safety improvement techniques out of our Fleet Safety Awards program. And it allows for these carriers to develop and programs within their fleet that make them safer as well. We always say there's no secret in safety, and this is that opportunity that we can support that mantra. That same data is also generated through our Best Fleets to Drive For program that allow carriers to look at the data generated or the anecdotal information that comes out of these contests and say, that'll work well in my fleet. Let's implement that. Let's make our fleet a better trucking company that operates on our roadways. And both programs are great programs to showcase the very best that TCA has to offer.
Ken, if I may, this is Jim.
Sure.
Just to mention, you talked about going to Notre Dame and being there with your father, and what I find that's really interesting, and it really is a key foundation of who Truckload Carriers Association is today, is our educational arm and all that we do. And what most people don't realize, we talk about NATME, the North American Transportation Management Institute, that's under the TCA umbrella, that was formed in 1944, believe it or not. And the reason NATME was formed in 1944 was basically they saw this opportunity to be able to provide education and training to reduce accidents, reduce injuries, and lower maintenance costs. And so when you look back, the training programs and continuing education units and certificates that NATME has developed over the years tie into improving safety, tie into improving maintenance, and now maintenance supervisors, as well as driver training. So it's been a key part of TCA for many years.
It's interesting. You mentioned NATME. I did not know until just recently that NATME was owned by TCA or was a part of TCA. So that was interesting to find that out, and certainly makes all the sense, in the world that's where, where it belongs. One of the things I found over the years, whether it's TCA or I've been involved in the Maintenance Council on different state trucking associations, when it comes to safety, maintenance, and increasing driver training, that's one thing us fleets, we may compete, for business, every day within our various specialties. But when it comes to those three things, we all work together because it's important, as an industry, not, to improve our image. And those three things are all important to all of us. And, it's great that we can get together at the different meetings and, work together to, try to improve the industry image, through improved safety, through better maintenance, and, and bringing better drivers into the industry. So, Jim Schoonover, do you have, want to talk a little bit about some of the educational opportunities that TCA does offer its members?
Absolutely. So a lot of what I'm going to share may sound or have the name of something that's been offered historically through TCA. But that being said, there have been many revisions and a new approach, quite frankly, to what we're rolling out from an educational perspective. And I'll get into that as we go. But just to kick off, we do offer certificate programs. We have 4 of them that we offer through TCA. And those address the human resource area. They address recruitment, retention, and we also have a fleet manager certificate program. So those are the 4 core certificate areas that TCA offers. Now, in those, of course, they've been with TCA now for quite some time, but in those is new content that is updated consistently throughout the year based on changes in the industry, new developments, etc. So as we go forward with our webinar series or with online virtual training, or as some on-demand training makes its way into our bundle of offerings, we look at how we can offer them within these certificates and make that even more of a value to our carriers. So, a short while ago, as we were talking prior to coming on the air, we look at membership and membership value quite seriously here. And if we look at the number of hours that a carrier or the staff of that carrier can touch TCA content, we're well into the hundreds of hours that we can offer a carrier to help develop their people at a very minimal cost to the development process. So it's a great bargain. It's great content. It comes from industry experts across the board. A lot of what we're doing now, as I said, we have a new approach, a variation in our approach. We're working very closely with the TCA profitability program, and that group meeting, various teams meeting across the country a number of times a year. And they share with us what the pressing issues are. And we then take those pressing issues, reach out to experts across the industry, and turn that into educational content that we can offer the carriers across our membership and those who may be interested in our membership. So that's where we are on that front. And then new upcoming in these next couple of months, the TCA profitability program will be offering some seminars. We have 2 in maintenance and 2 in operations. The maintenance programs will be offered in Nashville and Dallas, and the operations programs will be offered in Columbus, Ohio, and Indianapolis, Indiana. So that's what's on the cutting edge right now, or the exciting front for us. And we hope to see some of your team and hopefully others there as we go forward.
Well, you mentioned the profitability program, and that's been great for us. We've participated, I think for the past couple of years and maybe longer. And, it's certainly, something that we value. And, we really didn't, have that as part of our prior discussion here today. But, if you want to talk about that some more, it's, I think that's, it's just a great idea that TCA came up with to offer that. And,
Sure. And Jim touched on the modes that TCA represents across our membership. And we have those modes represented in each one of our TPP groups. We have 2 tiers that we offer in our truckload profitability program currently. And I'll talk about a third one here as we go further into our conversation. But the 2 that are in existence now, what we call tier 2 is an opportunity for a carrier or an operation to upload data and see where they fall statistically, how they're performing based on some key metrics that have been determined by TCA and by our consultants. And then, of course, we have our best practice groups, which meet, as I had said earlier, 2 to 3 times a year in various points throughout the country. And it's an opportunity for carriers, quite frankly, leadership of carriers to get together, discuss some of the pressing issues, see how they're performing on specific metrics, whether it's maintenance, safety, insurance costs, whatever the case may be. They can take a hard look at their business, talk about how they're achieving, what they're achieving, and if they're not to the metric point or to the accomplishment point that they would like to be, how then can they get there with insight of their peers? So it's a great opportunity not just to develop yourself, but to develop your team around you and to see how you compare across the industry to those who may be performing better in areas, or you may be the role that other people or in the lead that other people want to aspire to achieve. And you can share some insights on some of what it took to get to the position that you're in today.
Great. Yeah, that's, and it's, when I first learned about the programs, I was wondering on some of those things. As we've done a few acquisitions over the years, and finding 2 trucking companies that measure things the same way, was a little bit of a challenge, kind of like pushing water uphill. So I applaud you for figuring that out. And and I, like I said, we've done well with the information we've received in the participation in those programs. So
great, thanks, Ken.
Yeah. Jim Ward, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about drivers. We never seem to have enough drivers. It's a challenge for all of us. Are you seeing any trends or any good things coming down the pike in that area?
Well, Ken, you're absolutely right. The company I used to work for, Don Bowman, one man, one truck, founded it himself. And I remember over the years when we'd get in conversations, Don used to say, listen, just want to tell everybody around here, nothing happens until somebody's in that seat and turns that key. And it's absolutely true. And I think we all know that we can spend a lot of money on assets and facilities and things like that, and healthcare programs and property and casualty insurance. But if we don't have the right person in the right seat doing the right things, nothing really happens. It's good for the company. And so, it's kind of interesting. There's been some 2021 data released recently that basically stated, I think there's like 3.49 million professional drivers today operating in the transportation trucking industry. And it was good to see that number grew from 2020 by just almost 4%. And one of the exciting things that I think that I finally experienced in the industry after 30 some years of being around it is I think most companies, probably yours as well, that in 2020, 2021, and maybe some part of 2022, certainly had an opportunity to be able to go out and work with the shipping community and finally start to be able to raise the driver's wages and their way of life to a point was much needed as far as I'm concerned. And I was really happy to start to be able to see the gains that were made in wages for professional drivers during that time. So I think that's helped the industry some, but we're still at a deficit, and we all know it. Bob Costello stopped in here the other week, and we spent about an hour together, and he's still touting that at 80,000 number short. And there's a lot of moving parts associated with it, whether it's attrition because of age, people exiting the industry still maybe because of what we've experienced through COVID. I mean, just a lot of different reasons. But and as you know, Ken, our policy here at TCA is we're very much in favor of the Drive Safe Act. We're promoting the education and bringing into the industry the 18 to 20-year-olds. We truly believe that as an association that there's a gap that's created when we don't get those individuals at that age introduced to our industry that has changed significantly, especially with the new technology that's on equipment here today. And so we want to bring them in as a first career, not a second career at 35 or 40 years of age. And we don't think that's going to fix the problem, but we do think in the long run we'll continue to help the industry as we look forward to be able to develop and promote the commercial driving job.
Side note, we had our first 20-year-old in the pilot program, but he aged out here recently. He turned 21. So through our driving school, we're trying to promote that, the different pilot programs, as well as the the New York State was the last state to actually legalize, actually return to legalizing 18 to 20-year-olds for intrastate. We were able to get that bill passed a couple of years ago. So it's important, I think, to have access to these folks, right out of high school, make them aware of our industry, and the opportunities. I think, by the time, they start looking at us, it's a second or third career, and, they're starting in their 30s or 40s, and it'd be nice to have them the first 15, 20 years of their career as well. And, so it's great that TCA is doing their part to help promote that. So thank you.
Well, and Ken, I would congratulate you because, again, the pilot program is not filling up as rapidly as the feds hoped it would. And they put that together to be able to look at some good real live data to make some determination as to the fitness for duty of 18 to 20-year-olds. And so we're hoping that, they continue to look at, assess, and evaluate it and make some changes to it so that we can fill those numbers up for those individuals in that pilot program and get some good data and make some good decisions going forward. So thank you.
Well, yeah, and they don't, the typical federal program, they don't make it easy. And it's, because of, insurance restrictions, not every fleet, can participate in that. Yep. And, I think as we heard at the recent meeting in Orlando, not every big fleet agrees, with pushing that program, and that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I just thought, for our company, it's our way of doing our part, to try to introduce the industry to a younger generation and get them involved. The same way I was. I was able to get my license at 18 and made my first trip in a truck to California. I think it was 18 in 1 month when that happened. My dad taught us. We had to go through the driving. And learn that way. And I driven trucks in the yard, from about the time I was 15 or 16. So, I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now people would think that was kind of crazy on his part. But
that's a great case study, my friend.
Yeah, I managed to get out there and back without getting in too much trouble. Yes. Jim Schoonover, I understand TCA is creating a training course for small carrier fleets. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. We just within the past few months have been developing a program for small fleets to allow them to be educated in what we do with metrics, how we evaluate performance, et cetera. It's called Small Fleet University, Small Fleet Carrier University. And in it, we'll be addressing 3 core areas, those being maintenance, operations, and safety/insurance. And we're really looking at it as an introduction to performance analysis, as well as to how to gather an understanding of what these metrics are made up of and how then to impact the metrics. So if you look at TPP as being that program that looks at metrics and strategies and how you progress forward, this moves left of it and says, let's talk about how we get to those metrics and how you can impact them up front, understanding what they're made up of. And then as the next phase, let's look at what TPP can do for you and how we can fold you into that program to have more discussions about strategy, about process, et cetera. So this is the precursor to TPP in some sense, but it's also a great opportunity to learn more about those 3 areas that I said, and quite frankly, how to better evaluate your business in a consistent format that you can then compare and contrast against other carriers within the industry. We're offering this to all modes across the board. These will be classes or cohorts, made up of any type of mode. So we'll look at those metrics regardless of whether you're bulk, whether you're flatbed, et cetera. And we'll talk about, again, how they're built and what impacts your performance in those areas. We'll look at key areas, obviously within each one of those disciplines of a carrier. And we'll talk about the things that make up a good business structure and things that can impact the business structure as it might be flowing smoothly. What are some of the pitfalls? So, going back to the age-old leading indicator and lagging indicator, what are those things you look for? What are those things that may appear from the outside in that we may not see yet internally as we're managing an operation or managing performance? So we're excited to bring it forward. We'll be kicking this off with our first cohort in July. We certainly encourage anyone who's interested to reach out to us here at TCA, either myself or the general TCA line, and we'd be happy to share the bulk of information that we have about the program and to get people signed up. So we're excited, Ken.
Well, that's great. I think people think of the industry as, the big fleets they see, with thousands of trucks on the road, but, truly our industry, is predominantly small fleets. And, as us, Leonard, just like, many fleets, we have a brokerage side that relies on the small carriers and having well-run small carriers, to work with, is important. It's and I think it's important for the industry, to continue to support those smaller fleets as they build and grow into larger fleets. And so that kudos, that's great. And we'll try to share that with some of the fleets we work with, and see if we can't promote it within our company, to help bring some more members in for you. So
fantastic.
Let's shift gears a little bit. On this podcast, several times over the last year, we've talked about different environmental initiatives. We've talked about our testing of zero emission vehicles. We operate in New York. We're based in New York. We operate in the Northeast. We have a heavy West Coast presence. Where there's a lot of talk about moving quickly to zero emission vehicles, and I don't know that the industry is fully prepared for that. Dave, TCA recently announced that it's a founding member of the new Clean Freight Coalition. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what your role is going to be in that?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and thanks for highlighting that, because it really shows how industry is coming together to address this issue. You talked about lower emissions or zero emission vehicles and whether or not the industry is ready for this. This is that opportunity that we can actually tell that story. Of the founding members, in addition to TCA, we're working with ATA, National Tank Truck, the Engine Manufacturers Association, and American Truck Dealers Association. So there's 5 founding members of this organization with an opportunity to highlight, number one, what trucking has done already to show that we're taking care of the environment, that we're good stewards of the environment. It's 66 trucks today burn emissions what one truck did 30 years ago. So at this point in time, we're doing our job. The environment knows no better friend than the trucking industry, because we have to pass this down to our children and their children, because this is the freight delivery model that's employed in the United States. And we have to tell that story so that we can become a partner with industry, with agencies. As you know, EPA is just somewhat punted over to CARB to dictate how this rule is going to roll out in California. So we need to work with them so that we make sure that our equipment is reliable and has the ability to deliver that freight, is affordable, so that people can afford the equipment, and the end user, the consumer, is not paying $20 for a dozen eggs. And those standards, or the standards that are set, are achievable. So we're not looking at maintenance problems with these engines that come out, and then we have trucks on the side of the road or not operating because we won't be able to deliver freight because the industry's not ready. We're looking at mandates on equipment that has yet to be invented. specifically for the truckload segment of the industry. That's the long haul trucking industry that's delivering the majority of the freight in this country. So when you're looking at mandates on equipment that doesn't exist, certainly it's concerning. And this is that opportunity in which this coalition was formed to help state that case and become a partner and help guide how this really should roll out. We want to be good stewards. We support the environment, but at the same time, we have to do it in a way that is calculated and achievable. And that's what the CFC has been founded for.
You know, we haul a lot of berries off the West Coast, and New York is adopting a lot of the carb rules, you know, and as are, you know, several other states, you know, and they had tunnel vision almost, you know, in some of our conversations with you know, some of the agencies in Albany, you know, that zero emission, you know, means electric, and that you know, electric's the way we were going to go. And I was talking with New York State Trucking Association has a symposium every summer where they bring CalSTART and, you know, other interested players in, you know, in cleaning up the environment in New York together to talk about some of these things. And when I mentioned, you know, that we're hauling berries, that if she liked berries on her morning cereal, or you know, put some strawberries with her yogurt, she might want to consider moving to Phoenix, because that's where our truck was going to run out of electricity with no place to park and plug it in. You know, she looked at me like I was nuts, but you know, a lot of these folks don't understand the reality of it, and it's going to take a group like you're putting together there, you know, to tell that message. And you know, yeah, we want to get there with you, but we have to have a path that works. You know, at least a couple of us on this podcast here today have been around long enough to have experienced every EPA mandate, you know, and the gray hair and the aggravation it created with trucks that weren't quite ready, you know, for the mandate from a mechanical standpoint, you know, and just you know, upset drivers, you know, and you know, just the financial implications of that. So, you know, we need to work together to do it in a way that makes sense for everybody involved. So, you know, it's great that you're a part of that.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. Like you said, nobody wins if we have trucks that can't operate. And right. The supply chain, one thing COVID did show us how fragile it actually is. So we have to better plan for the future and what that looks like. And we need to be part of that discussion. And this is that opportunity to do so. Yeah,
that's great. And, you know, it's something that needs to continue. And, you know, in that same vein, you know, we're always looking for financial you know, ways to improve the industry financially, and a lot of taxes, you know, have been put on the industry over the years, and at that time they may have been put in place. They made sense. Jim Ward, what are your thoughts on a proposed repeal of the federal excise tax, and do you think it's got a chance of passing?
Well, you know, that's certainly an interesting question, especially given the time and the changes in technology and the conversations about zero emission vehicles and the price point on these zero emission vehicles. You know, you take 12% of $150,000, you know, you're talking $18,000 or $20,000. You take 12% of $400,000, and now you're starting to talk about some real money. And you know, I think people begin to forget of the fact, and we talk about it often, that, you know, this was implemented in 1917 for World War I to help with the mobilization of equipment for the war and then the Great Depression, and you know, we tend to believe that it's certainly lived its time frame. Certainly, it was also used to help fund the Highway Trust Fund, which I know also is one of the big questions whenever we get engaged with that conversation today. But the fact of the matter is if you want quality carriers to move and gravitate towards the new equipment, then you know, I always say, you said it really well earlier. You know, there's no secrets when it comes to safety. There's no secrets when it comes to managing your maintenance expenses and costs, and we should, and training our drivers, we should all realize that. I think there's also no secret in understanding and realizing that taxes are a burden to the industry. And I think this is a great way to either repeal or let it sunset and let the industry take advantage of this 12% on this new equipment that's purchased. And it might encourage them to you know, step forward and find this opportunity to bring this new equipment into their fleets a little more palatable.
Dave, you want to add that at all, or?
Well, and I think that becomes a thing. Repealing, there was a bill introduced just last month. Repealing the FET goes a long way to making that equipment more affordable. Now, the question that's always going to be is, how do you pull $4 to $6 billion out of the Highway Trust Fund that they're currently accounting for, when roads and bridges are so important to this industry and to everybody that operates on them, including your passenger vehicles that we share the road with? Well, the groundwork's been laid. We've gone down this path of doing general fund transfers to help support our highways and bridges. And this emphasizes that. As Jim said, this is a World War I tax that was instituted. World War I was over a century ago. Do we need that anymore? I mean, there's some gray hair on this podcast. I think we can shift tides on that and move into the next generation of what highway funding looks like. And probably a lot of that is going to involve general fund transfers. We did it to support the infrastructure bill. We're going to do it again. We seem to always do it when our highway trust fund tends to run low. So that groundwork's been laid. Let's go full throttle on this. Make equipment more affordable as we're looking at larger price tags with this new environmentally friendly equipment, zero emission vehicles, and let's encourage the adoption of these types of technology when they're available to benefit this industry, so that there's an easier path moving forward.
And Ken, to answer your question, I think with the American Truck Dealers Association pushing for this, I think with the American Trucking Association pushing for this, I think for Truckload Carriers Association, I think with the state associations on your call on Washington, going in and having these conversations with your representatives, I don't know that there's ever been a better time to have this conversation than right now. I'm hopeful that something can happen, but I think the more of us that continue the dialogue, the better the opportunity is for us.
We're going to Washington here in a few weeks, and I expect that this will be one of the topics that we discuss. And we're also in New York State. I think you guys are familiar with the ton-mile tax that the state of New York has, along with a few other states, and we're using the same argument to repeal that tax. And I really feel that if we're ever going to have a chance to get rid of the highway use tax in New York, it's now, and it's because of that same argument. Our members are interested in investing in newer equipment, but we have to somehow find a way to lower the cost with our for our members, so they have the money to invest in. And we've gotten a lot further this year than we ever have. I don't know whether we'll get it done, but our goal is to get that in next year's state budget. But since they haven't passed the budget on time, maybe we still have an opportunity this year. So we'll see. But I'm looking forward to having the conversations about that. And one of the other topics, if you want to talk about parking or any other things going on, with interest in to our industry, Dave, going on in Washington right now.
Well, it seems like every day there's a new bill being introduced. I think Congress is set on getting a supply chain solution bill out some point this year. The question becomes, what does it look like? And you're seeing a lot of these one-off bills getting introduced. We just talked about FET. There's a truck parking bill, truck parking legislation that got introduced. It's a big victory for our industry because it's dedicated dollars that go strictly to the development of new and updated parking spaces that our drivers need in the industry. It's no secret that truck parking and the shortage that exists within it is the number one problem for our professional truck drivers. We need to find a path to fix that. And these bills do that. $755 million over 4 years is not a small amount of money. This is a large amount of money that can go a long way to finding new places to park and new properties to buy and develop and pave so that there are services there that our drivers can use when they have to get their rest. Everybody knows we're regulated to get that rest, so there has to be places to park when we do it. $755 million will do exactly that. Certainly there were dollars in the infrastructure bill that a lot of people passed along to states as discretionary funding. The problem is 2023 dollars aren't what they once were when it got passed in 2021. So states are looking at juggling, saying, I need roads, I need bridges, and I need truck parking. When you're looking at those infrastructure dollars, invariably truck parking loses out, which is why we have that need for that bill that got introduced. Now, where does it go from here? As I said, you're talking supply chain solutions bill that's going through Congress. There's going to be a lot of things that get introduced, FET being one of them. I know there's a bill being talked about for pre-employment screening, make that more of a daily use feature rather than pre-employment. There's a lot of things that are going on within the industry. You're going to see a lot of introduction of bills that can hopefully stick and move forward. Now, you have to pay attention to these larger bills. This cannot be one of those situations that it has a solution looking for a problem. There have to be the bills that get introduced and get stuck in a larger omni-type piece of legislation. There has to be a real need for it. And we at TCA will be down on the Hill. We've talked about Ship It Act, where there are caveats or parts to that bill that just weren't good for the industry. And we'll continue to beat that horn. There are several things we continue to talk about, truck parking again being one of them, hair testing for drugs and alcohol, employee misclassification when it comes to the independent contractor. These are issues that are going far and wide, and we're taking that opportunity to talk about that on Capitol Hill. And if you ever want to come to DC and on top of your New York Trucking Association, we're happy to have you there to talk about those issues as well. You can never have enough people in Washington talking about the industry. Our assumption, we shouldn't ever assume that we think they know trucking, because a lot of times, and Jim can attest to this, when we go on Capitol Hill, often it's not the case. They're operating under a different assumption, and we have to tell them how it really works out. So as you're looking at 2023, you're looking at a supply chain solution bill that could get floated out. Whether it actually gets passed is an entirely different story, because the sum will equal the parts of what it's made up to. So we're looking at that almost daily, but it's going to be a busy year.
Yeah, and you mentioned something. A lot of times the good bills get bad things added, and it makes it a challenge. It's just the way things work at both Washington and at the state level. And, and the other thing you mentioned, I think this is an important message to get out, is, it's great to have representation by organizations like TCA in Washington and the Trucking Association of New York and Albany. But as members, it's really our obligation to come down and support you, when you're talking to these folks, because the elected officials, they want to meet with the constituents and want to understand the impact they have on their business. And if we're not there advocating for ourselves, I can promise you there's people there advocating for the other side of that.
Correct.
And so it's important that we do our part. So thank you for doing those things for us. Anyways, the Truckload Carriers Association, continues to do outstanding work, as you've seen here today with our conversation. Leonard Express is proud to be a member, and we certainly appreciate the Fleet Safety and the Best Fleets to Drive For awards. Thank you for joining us here today.
Ken, thank you very much. Appreciate your 20 plus years of membership at Truckload Carriers Association. Congratulations for walking across the stage this year and being recognized as one of the top 20 best fleets to drive for. And most importantly, congratulations for what's important to all of us in this industry, is your first place award for the Division 5 Safety Award this year you received at our annual meeting. Congratulations to you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you. And, it's certainly something we were very proud of, and, and appreciate the opportunity to be a part of. So, well, that's a wrap for this edition of Leading the Way at Leonard's. If you have any questions or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. You can send them in at leadingtheway@leonardsexpress.com. And please don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast. I'm your host, Ken Johnson. Until next time, keep on trucking.
We're running 18